Why does money matter so much to us? It's a question that digs deep into our daily lives, isn't it? Money isn't just paper or coins. It's a fascinating journey through time that reflects our society's evolution. From ancient shells to today's digital currencies, let's dive into this epic tale of currency evolution. Get ready to have your mind expanded as we go. Have you ever paused to think about how we ended up with this complex web of buying and selling? It all started pretty simply, with what we call barter systems. Imagine living in a world without cash where you trade your freshly caught fish for your neighbor's handmade basket. Sounds straightforward, right? But hold on. What if your neighbor didn't want fish? Or what if your fish spoiled before you found a suitable trade? That's where things get tricky. Barter systems required a double coincidence of wants, meaning both parties had to want what the other offered. That's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Picture an early village market for a second. You show up with your fish, proud of your catch. You spot a beautiful clay pot. You ask the potter if they are willing to trade, but they say no. They need firewood today, not fish. Now you're stuck playing matchmaker with goods. You look for someone who needs fish and has firewood, then try to convince that person to accept fish now, even though they would rather trade for grain tomorrow. Every step adds friction. Every step adds time. And time, even in a small village, carries a cost. The sun moves, food spoils, opportunities pass. Despite its limitations, this concept of exchanging value laid the groundwork for everything that followed. It taught us about scarcity, desirability, and the need for a universally accepted medium of exchange. Think about it. If you could only trade what you had for what you wanted, it would make life pretty complicated, right? You would have to walk around with a mental inventory of the town's wants and needs, mapping out who wants what and when. You would learn fast that not all goods are equal. Some are durable, some perish quickly, some are easy to divide, and some are awkward to split at all. Try dividing a live goat evenly. Try saving value for a rainy day when your store of wealth is a basket of figs that will be mush by next week. This is where people got creative. In some places, communities gravitated toward items that the group already treated as special. Maybe it was salt that was hard to harvest and always in demand. Maybe it was beads that took days to carve, or shells that came from a distant coast. These goods were not money yet in the modern sense, but they carried a shared understanding. They were scarce. They were recognized. They could move across hands without losing their identity. The seed of a bigger idea was there, quietly taking root. The desire for a more efficient system led to a game-changing innovation: metal coins. Imagine the moment when someone thought, hey, let's create something standardized that everyone can agree on. Around the 7th century BCE in Lydia, which is now part of Turkey, the first standardized coins were born. These weren't just random lumps of metal. They were carefully weighed and stamped with official marks, made from precious metals like electrum, an alloy of gold and silver. This was a total game-changer. No more haggling over the value of each piece of metal. The stamp guaranteed its weight and purity. This standardization made trade quicker, fairer, and way more reliable. It opened the door to larger transactions and allowed wealth to be stored and transported more easily. Coins became a universal language of value, paving the way for bustling markets and expanding empires. Just think about how revolutionary it was to have a standardized unit of value that was easily divisible and recognizable. Let's unpack why that mattered. With coins, a farmer could sell a cart of grain and carry away value in a pouch that fit at the waist. A craftsperson could price a bronze tool at 3 coins and know that 3 coins tomorrow would still be 3 coins. Sellers could mark prices, buyers could count out payment, and both could walk away satisfied. Even disputes got easier to resolve because a stamped coin had a public meaning. The symbol said, "This piece meets the standard." That little mark did something huge. It wrapped trust into metal. Coins also told stories. The images pressed into their faces signaled who issued them and what authority stood behind them. A city's emblem, a ruler's profile, a symbol of a god or a landmark, all of that made each coin a tiny messenger. As coins traveled, stories traveled with them. Traders on far roads would recognize an emblem they had seen before and accept it with confidence. Markets could grow wider because the token of value could cross borders in a way barter goods struggled to match. Of course, coins had trade-offs. Coins were heavy in bulk. They required mining, minting, and careful control to maintain standards. There were problems like clipping, where dishonest hands shaved off tiny bits around the edges. There were debates over which metal mattered more. But for centuries, coins carried the world's commerce on their faces and rims. They helped cities grow, armies march, and caravans connect distant cultures. They made it possible for a merchant to settle a debt in a different town from where the promise began. They took the heat out of time and distance, and they did it with a familiar clink. But wait, the innovation didn't stop there. Hold on to your hats, because the next big leap came from an unexpected place, China. Picture this. It's the 7th century CE, and China introduces something truly revolutionary: paper money. At first, it was essentially promissory notes, or flying money, used by merchants to avoid lugging around heavy coins. Imagine trying to carry a sack of coins over long distances. No thanks. These notes were like receipts for deposited coins, transferable and redeemable. Over time, especially during the Song dynasty in the 11th century, the government began issuing its own official paper currency. This was mind-blowing. Suddenly, wealth wasn't just about physical metal. It was represented by a piece of paper, backed by the credibility of an issuing authority. This invention dramatically eased large-scale transactions, stimulated economic growth, and allowed for greater flexibility in monetary policy. It was a testament to human ingenuity, showing that value could be represented by something symbolic rather than intrinsically valuable, as long as trust existed. Think of the practical shift for a merchant hauling porcelain, silk, or tea. Instead of a caravan weighed down by strings of metal cash, the same value could ride folded in a sleeve. Payments could move through cities with speed. Instead of waiting for someone to count piles of coins, a stamped note said, "This claim stands." The system turned on confidence, on the belief that the note could be redeemed when needed. With the right rules, that belief held, and trade raced ahead. You can almost feel the world getting lighter here. Metal did not disappear. It still underpinned value in many ways, but the day-to-day act of moving purchasing power began to shift. Paper produced leverage. A state could issue notes to grease the flow of trade. A merchant could split a large payment into smaller claims. A banker could sit at a desk, match claims against deposits, and do business with a brush instead of a scale. The idea behind the note was simple, a promise written down and recognized, but its impact was enormous. Of course, the promise had to be kept. If too many notes floated around without enough confidence to back them, value sagged. If counterfeiting rose, trust fell. If rulers cut corners, people noticed. The same lesson keeps returning across history. Money works because we believe it works. When that belief is anchored, commerce thrives. When it wobbles, everything shakes. Fast forward to the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and we see another significant monetary system emerge, the gold standard. Imagine countries deciding that their currency, whether it was pounds, dollars, or francs, would be directly convertible into a fixed amount of gold. This system brought a sense of stability and predictability to international trade. It meant that countries couldn't just print unlimited amounts of money because their currency supply was tied to their gold reserves. This provided a tangible anchor for value, fostering confidence in currencies and making cross-border transactions simpler. Picture a trader in one country selling goods to a buyer in another. The price might be quoted in the buyer's currency, but the hidden foundation was gold. If the buyer's currency could be turned into a known weight of gold, and the seller's money could be turned into that same gold weight back home, the exchange rate could be calculated with clarity. Fewer surprises, fewer wild swings, a shared anchor under competing flags. The gold standard also set a tone for policy. It told governments, live within your means. It told central banks, match your promises to your reserves. It told the public, this paper in your hand has a direct link to something you can weigh. In an era of growing international trade, that felt safe. It made planning a bit easier. It shaped a world where a ship could carry goods across oceans, and the paperwork could settle with less fear that the value would morph mid-voyage. However, the gold standard wasn't without its limitations. It constrained governments' ability to respond to economic crises, and a country's economic growth was tied to its gold supply. As the tumultuous 20th century unfolded, particularly after the Great Depression and World War II, the rigidities of the gold standard became glaringly apparent. It was gradually abandoned, first partially and then fully, paving the way for our modern fiat currency systems. In this setup, money's value is derived from government decree and public trust, not a physical commodity. Let's pause on that shift. Fiat currency says, this note has value because the issuing authority says it does, and because we all agree to treat it that way. The promise moved from metal to institutions. It moved from a vault to a framework of laws, central banks, and collective habits. Taxes must be paid in the national currency, wages are counted in that unit, prices are posted, contracts are signed, and the rhythm of daily life ticks in that measure. The shared belief takes a new form, but the core is the same. Confidence. Fiat systems brought new tools. Central banks could adjust interest rates to cool or warm the economy. They could add money or remove it to encourage lending or ease inflation. Policymakers could act when storms hit. That agility helped manage shocks, but it also introduced new debates. How much money is enough? How much is too much? When does stimulus help, and when does it hurt? People learned to watch inflation, to ask whether the money in their pocket would buy as much next year as it does today. Now let's zoom into the 21st century, where the evolution of money has taken another quantum leap: digital currencies. We're talking about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a whole bunch of others. These aren't just virtual versions of traditional money, they're entirely new paradigms. Built on decentralized blockchain technology, digital currencies offer transparency, security, and often independence from central authorities. For many, they represent the ultimate evolution of monetary systems, addressing concerns about inflation, government control, and the inefficiencies of traditional banking. Picture this: peer-to-peer transactions without intermediaries. This could revolutionize remittances, global payments, and even how we think about ownership and value. It's an exciting, sometimes bewildering frontier that constantly pushes the boundaries of what money can be and how it functions in our increasingly connected world. Let's make that concrete. A worker earning income in one country can send value to family members in another without waiting days, and without losing a chunk to fees at every step. A buyer can pay a seller on the other side of the world by signing a digital message, and a network of computers can verify it without a bank clerk at a window. Records can live on a ledger that anyone can audit. Assets can be represented as tokens that move at the speed of software. The promise here is not only faster payments, it is programmable value. With that promise comes new questions. How do we keep wallets secure? How do we resolve disputes when keys are lost? How do we handle volatility when a digital coin's price jumps in an afternoon? How do we balance privacy with law enforcement? Just like earlier shifts, the technology opens a door and then society has to figure out how to walk through it without tripping. Some people embrace the change with both hands, others are cautious. The conversation keeps evolving, because the tools keep evolving too. While we talk about digital currencies, we should also note how they changed the language of trust. In older systems, trust sat in institutions. In these networks, trust sits in code and in the incentives that keep the network honest. Miners or validators do work to secure the chain, and the chain in turn rewards them. The ledger becomes hard to tamper with because thousands of eyes watch it. The idea is elegant, and it has captured the imagination of developers, investors, and everyday users who want more control over their money. Still, the practical world is messy. Bridges between traditional finance and crypto have to be built carefully. People need on-ramps and off-ramps they can use with confidence. Regulators want clarity about what counts as a currency, what counts as a security, and what counts as a commodity. No system escapes the old lesson. Money works because we believe it works, and that belief depends on rules that feel fair. Speaking of shaping the future, let's not overlook a recent and intriguing development: the BRICS nations exploring gold-backed currencies. BRICS, which includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are major global economic players. Their discussions about potentially introducing a new currency, possibly backed by gold, represent a significant shift in global finance dynamics. What does this mean? It could signify a desire for greater financial independence from traditional Western-dominated systems, a way to stabilize their economies, or even a strategic play to challenge the dominance of the US dollar as the world IS reserve currency. If they pull this off, a gold-backed BRICS currency could alter trade patterns, influence commodity prices, and reshape geopolitical power balances. It's a fascinating development that suggests the journey of money is far from over, and its future could be even more diverse and dynamic than its past. Imagine how such a move might feel on the ground. A manufacturer in one BRICS country might price a contract in a new unit that links to a known quantity of gold. A supplier in another BRICS country might accept it with less fear of a sudden currency slide. Central banks in those nations could hold reserves tied to a tangible asset, and public conversations could shift toward a more commodity-linked frame. The ripple effects would not be limited to those countries. Markets watch signals like this. If a new standard gained traction, others would have to respond. That response might be curiosity, competition, or careful observation, but the attention would be real. At the same time, the practical challenges are large. You need rules for convertibility. You need clarity about how reserves are measured and verified. You need to decide how flexible the system can be in a crisis. You need to knit together economies with different needs. None of that is trivial. The point here is not to crown a winner. The point is to notice the pattern. Money evolves in response to what people need and what they fear. Stability matters. Flexibility matters. Access matters. Trust sits at the center. So where does this leave us, standing in the checkout line of history with a cart full of lessons? Let's connect the dots in the same arc we started. We began with barter, simple and human. You have something, I have something, and we talk. That worked in small circles with patience and luck. But it asked for a double coincidence of wants, which made many trades stall. It pushed people to look for a common reference, a medium that could stand between goods and smooth the exchange. We moved to metal coins, a remarkable answer to that push. Standard weights, stamped marks, and a portable store of value. Trade moved faster. Prices could be set. Savings could accumulate in a form that lasted. Coins turned markets into places where a carpenter could sell a bench and buy bread without tracking who wanted what and when. The coin did the heavy lifting. We saw paper money appear as a practical leap for long distances and large values. Notes started as claims on metal and grew into government-issued currency that made economies more flexible. The core idea of a promise took center stage. Paper looked fragile, but the trust behind it made it strong. As long as that trust held, the paper moved mountains of goods without moving mountains of metal. We saw the gold standard step in to anchor value across borders. It gave a shared reference and kept policy on a short leash. It also revealed a limit. When storms hit, that leash could be too short. In time, the world shifted to fiat money, where value rests on institutions and shared confidence rather than a fixed commodity. That shift opened the door to monetary policy that could respond to crises and guide the economy through rough water. And now we are living through another chapter with digital currencies. Code, networks, and cryptography offer new ways to hold and move value. They carry a promise of speed, openness, and control in the hands of users. They also raise new questions about stability, governance, and protection. The conversation is not just technical, it is deeply human. What do we trust? What do we need? What trade-offs feel fair? Alongside that, we watch large economies explore the idea of tying value back to gold in new ways, not as a return to the exact past, but as a signal that the foundation of money remains a live question. The world is asking again, what should back our promises? What kind of anchor serves us best in a time of rapid change? Let's make this even more tangible, with a few micro-stories that fit right into each step. Each story stays close to what we already discussed. Each one is a window into how money felt for real people at street level. In the barter era, picture a fisher by the shore at dusk. The catch is good, the baskets at home are worn. They cross the village to see the weaver, but the weaver's child is sick, and the family needs herbs, not fish. The fisher trudges on to the healer, hoping to trade fish for herbs, then circle back to the weaver. By the time the loop closes, some fish have spoiled, and the weaver has traded a spare basket to someone else. The day ends with a half-solved need. The lesson lands hard. Even honest work needs a better bridge. In the early coinage era, imagine a traveling merchant entering a city gate. The guard weighs a coin, looks at the stamp, nods, and waves the traveler through. At the market stall, the merchant lays out 3 stamped coins. The seller counts them and nods. They do not share a language fluently, but the coin speaks for them. The merchant leaves light-footed, a small purse still safe at the belt. It feels like magic, but it is just standards and trust at work. When paper notes spread, think of a silk trader who once paid a small army to guard metal along a mountain pass. Now the trader carries wrapped notes from a trusted house. At each city they settle accounts with ink. The guards get lighter duties. The caravans move faster. The same trust that once lived in a seal on a coin now lives in a seal on a sheet. The trader sleeps better because the load is smaller and the promise is clearer. Under the gold standard, picture a shipping clerk in a port office. The ledger shows goods sailing next week. The invoice states a price in a foreign currency, but the clerk translates it with confidence because the exchange rate holds steady against gold. The numbers feel solid enough to plan around. The ship leaves, the payment arrives, and the books balance with fewer surprises. The clerk looks out the window at the water and feels that balance in the rhythm of the dock. In the fiat era, imagine a shop owner who sees a slowdown in customers. The news says interest rates drop. A bank calls with a lower rate on a loan to restock inventory. The owner signs, refills the shelves, and keeps staff on the schedule. A policy knob turned, and it mattered on the street. The money itself did not change form, but the way it moved through the system did. And that flexibility kept the lights on. In the digital currency era, think of a coder in one country who sells a small tool online. A buyer pays from another continent in minutes. The payment lands in a wallet without waiting days for correspondent banks to pass the baton. The coder can convert to local money or keep some value in the token. It feels new because it is. The screen shows a transaction confirmed by a network rather than a stamp at a counter. The same old goal, exchange value with someone far away, gets a fresh path. Now fold in the BRICS conversation. Picture a commodity exporter negotiating a contract with a buyer in another BRICS nation. They discuss settling in a unit linked to gold. The exporter runs the math on what that stability could mean for revenue. The buyer looks at risk and sees fewer sudden swings. They still have to agree on terms, verify reserves, and trust the framework, but you can feel why the idea gets attention. It taps into that deep human desire for something steady under our promises. All of these scenes share a theme. Money solves problems in stages. It responds to friction and tries to remove it. It listens to fear and tries to calm it. It follows the path of least resistance, and then it creates new paths. Each tool that survives does so because people find it useful in daily life. If a form of money speeds up trade, protects savings, and simplifies decisions, it tends to stick. Let's circle back to the line that quietly sits under everything we have said. Money is a social technology. It coordinates strangers. It compresses trust into a form we can carry. A stamped coin, a signed note, a digital signature on a chain, all of these are ways to say, I promise. And all of these are ways to answer, I accept. When those two sentences can be spoken easily and believed widely, societies flourish. So, what's the takeaway from all this? From bartering fish for baskets to shiny metal coins, revolutionary paper notes, the anchoring power of gold and the mind-bending world of digital assets. The story of money is a testament to human innovation and our constant quest for more efficient ways to exchange value. And guess what? The story continues to unfold right before our eyes, promising even more exciting changes. If you zoom out, the pattern is plain. We keep searching for better ways to match wants, store effort, and move promises through time. The tools change, but the aim does not. We want speed without chaos. We want stability without stagnation. We want access without unfair barriers. Money is the lever we build to move those heavy stones. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think is the next big step in the evolution of money? Are we heading towards a cashless society, or will traditional currencies make a comeback? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the history of money, give this video a big thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more fascinating insights into history, economics, and the world around us. Your support truly means the world to me. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to catch you in the next video.